to see you. How are you today?
Actually, I'm very well, considering that I'm in my study. I'm looking outside. The sky is slightly overcast. It's a bit cold, and the dog needs a massive walk because it's a Serbian Shepherd dog. It's the size of a bear. And according to legend, these dogs, they fight wolves. So this is why I'm dreading the walk. He won't fight me, and there aren't any wolves where we live, but he's got lots of energy.
I love you already. Anybody who has a dog, that's it. I'm a dog person. I love doggies. And
well,
actually,
we're really well then.
we will. And I know that it's your birthday tomorrow. So hopefully you've got lots of great plans coming up for that. At time of recording, of course, when this goes out, you would have had your birthday.
Absolutely. But, I mean, I'm 21 and I'm so excited.
I know.
I was 21 last year as well.
Fantastic. I can't get away with 21 anymore, but I think you can. So listen, Juliette, in the introduction, we mentioned that a chance remark affected your path, your journey in life. Tell me, what was that chance remark?
Well, it goes all the way back in time. Let me be clear, we're not talking pre-dinosaur age. This is post-dinosaur. So imagine Juliette as this young 21-year-old, bewildered undergraduate at university, and I had no idea what I wanted to do because I kept on chopping and changing. And I had this boyfriend who became a press photographer, and he's now given that up so that he can run a carp farm in France, but that's another story. We can discuss it on another day. But anyway, he had this ex-girlfriend who was terribly nice, and she was offered a training place as a radio journalist, and she turned it down, which didn't make sense to me because I just thought, my gosh, radio, you can do all sorts of things. And she just said, look, I just don't think I can do it, but I'm sure that you could. And I considered it and thought, well, okay, then how about it? Now, in those days, there was no internet. So I couldn't actually go onto a Google and type things up and find out everything I needed to know. So I remember writing to the BBC and getting these leaflets and things telling you about the corporation and how wonderful it is and all that kind of stuff, and getting leaflets from ITN and just talking to people and whatever. And I thought, well, okay, then I'll give this a go. And of course, the rest, as they say, is history, because I studied in London, took a year in London at the Elephant and Castle, which I'd heard about, but I was born and raised in North London. So going to the Elephant and Castle, that was a bit like going into the depths of Babylon, because it was like, good grief, what is this? I don't know if you've been to the Elephant and Castle, but in those days, yeah, that's right, it was grey. And it had this elephant, not a real elephant, I hasten to add, but it had this elephant on top of this 1960s concrete shopping precinct.
I remember.
Yeah, it's just unbelievable, with all these subways and goodness knows what else. So I spent about a year there, and it was really interesting. I really enjoyed it, and I thought, yeah, I quite like this. I enjoy radio, and then I sort of made the drift into television a little bit later. But oddly enough, I've come back to radio. The great thing about radio is that you don't have to wear any makeup, and you can wear your scruffiest jeans and your t-shirt and nobody needs to know. But the conversations somehow seem a little bit more authentic, because I think that people don't feel under pressure in the way that they do when they're in the TV studio, because they've got a camera beaming down on them and there's this sense of, oh my gosh, everybody's watching me, which is why radio's great. It's more free flowing, and the conversations, they're good fun. It doesn't even matter if they're tough conversations, you can still get through them. It's friendly sparring, but there's an incredible sense of satisfaction when it's done. But basically, that's how it happened. It was that one chance remark when my then boyfriend told me about his ex and what she wanted to do. Well, she was offered this job, this place, and she said, no, I don't think I can do it, but you can. And I think she took up a place in retail. Whether she is still in retail, I don't know, but it was thanks to her.
If she's listening in, please send us a postcard, let us know. And listen,
yeah,
I remember.
Her name is Christine Dick.
Okay, Christine.
That's probably her maiden name.
Okay, get in touch, Christine. That would be amazing, wouldn't it? And listen, I remember the pre-internet days as well. So isn't that, so that dates us. There'll be people listening who think, what, there was life before internet? Anyway, you also mentioned random moments of fate, which I think we all experience, but you've obviously had some that really made an impact, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've always had this sort of nerdish interest in economies. Do not ask me why, but I've always been interested in economies and businesses and things like this. And I remember, this is back in the 90s, this job was advertised for, it was an anchor's role at Bloomberg, and I'd never heard of Bloomberg. And I thought, well, okay, then I know somebody who has. So there was somebody I knew who worked in the city. I met them at a party and I said, look, what is Bloomberg? And they said, oh, it's amazing. It's brilliant. We can't survive without it. And what he was talking about, once I actually sort of calmed him down, was a box which had all sorts of buttons and gadgets and things on it, but it was what the traders basically used to help them trade. If you were in analytics, you could use it because it could just bring up all these graphs and goodness knows what else. I mean, it was just this mountain of endless information enshrined in this box. So he said, oh, yeah, you ought to do this job. It'll be really good fun. You'll love it, blah, blah, blah. So I applied for the job and then got this letter saying, thanks, but no thanks. And then a friend of mine also applied for the job and they say, yeah, we want you. And then she just decided, I don't want you. And she just told me, I'm not accepting the job. And it's like, well, why? Nah, I don't want to do it. And I can't even remember how many days it was after she told me that or how many hours. But the next thing I knew, I got this telephone call from this recruitment agency. It was very, very sheepish because obviously they were trying to handle the recruitment of the staff. And they just said, look, we know we told you that we're not interested, but would you reconsider? And it's like, well, OK, fine. And I went to the interview. I'm not going to tell you who did the interview because he'd probably deny this. But again, the random stroke of fate, he's now really good friends with one of my friends from Bloomberg in those days. But he called me into the interview and he asked me about where I'd worked. And I told him that I'd worked at a particular TV station. He said, and to which he said, and I'm quoting him, my ex-father-in-law worked in there. What a da-da-da-da-da. Yeah, it was a right so-and-so. So how much do you want then? That's what he said to me. And it's like, I've never had an interview like this before because normally they're a bit more staid, a bit more formal. And I told him, okay, well, this is what I'd be expecting. Yeah, that's about reasonable. All right, it's Tuesday today. Do you want to start next Monday? And that was it. So it was that whole sense of fate that because she decided that she didn't want the job, I then get this call from the recruitment agency, which had previously dropped me, to say, look, come and would you be interested in working with these people? And I stayed for nearly 5 years. So it was just one of those bizarre situations. And then the guy who interviews me reconnects with one of my friends from there. And he's calmed down a lot, apparently. But I mean, I've never reminded him about that interview, but I'm sure that he'd deny it.
Fantastic. So and that was great background and great learning, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Working
it
there from
was.
Bloomberg, it really helped set you up. You were made redundant, but you then went back into TV studios. Why did you go back to TV? Had you not had enough of that?
Yeah, I mean, basically, this was between leaving Bloomberg and then going to Sky, because I worked at Sky for nearly 6 years. And so, yes, it was all good fun initially. And then I was made redundant. And that was, I'm going to combine this answer with the question that you put to me, because this was my other random moment of fate thing. Because what was quite funny was that I'd reached this stage where I was at Sky where I was actually very bored, which sounds a bit weird, isn't it? Because you're anchoring programs, you're seen around the world, and you're bored. How can you be bored? But I was getting bored because it was this thing about the formula of news and going through this routine. So I was driving into Isleworth, which is miles away from where I live, and it was very exhausting, etc., etc. And I just thought, I really want to leave. I just don't think I can do this anymore. And on the 6th of June 2006, two things happened. Two things. One, the remake of The Omen was launched in London. It was a red carpet opening, and I got a telephone call from my boss saying, look, can we see you tomorrow? Don't worry about your shift. And I thought, you're going to make me redundant. And that's exactly what happened. But it was actually one of the best things that actually happened to me financially, because I was thinking of leaving. Had I left before that redundancy notice, I would have shortchanged myself financially. But to address your other question, yes, I was bored working in the newsroom, and then I went back to the newsroom. And I did it because it was all that I had known. I wasn't shell-shocked at my redundancy, but I just thought, okay, I need to get back to work. So you instinctively aim for that industry which you know best. Okay, that's where I went. But I found it was the same issue. I was excited at first, but then there was this sense of boredom, and it's the boredom with the news formula. I had spent nearly 5 years working in the city, and I had to understand economies, I had to understand businesses, I had to get a sense of it. I will never have the knowledge of somebody who trades 24/7 or somebody who's a banking analyst, but I understand their world a little bit better. And when you have a financial story, which you've prepared for it, you've got your guests set up, and then you're told, oh, your business bulletin, yes, we factored in 3 minutes, but you've only got 1 minute now because Adele's singing a song live and we want to take a bit of her singing, and we also want to have a show business journalist discuss that. So your bulletin is reduced to 3 minutes. Don't get me wrong, I like Adele, but I'm sorry, if you're talking about an economy and you've got growing inflation and that is going to impact on a lot of people, I'm sorry, I don't really care about a celebrity journalist's appraisal of a particular singer or whatever. To me, it's not important. But this was what was happening. Or the other thing that happened with news is that, I mean, I was working during the global financial crisis, and I remember, again, I'm not going to mention the name of the company, but there was a particular company, there was something which was happening within its inner workings, and it had a big impact. And I remember working with my colleagues on this, and we were looking around, reading the stuff which was coming up online and talking to people. And we then figured out, okay, this is what is happening, and this is why this story is important, and this is why it fits into the subprime mortgage crisis. And it was a big story. And then to have the editor of one of the bulletins come up to me and say, okay, does this story make a good lead? And there's an incredible responsibility when an editor of a flagship news bulletin comes to you and you're just the anchor and says, is it worth leading on this story? And you say, yes. And you think, if I've got this wrong, I am not going to be working in this place. My shifts are going to disappear, because I know how this game is played, that if it goes badly wrong, I am the weak person in the link because I'm a freelancer. So the chances are that I'm going to get the blame on this. As it happened, it was a very good call because they led on the bulletin, and we knew it was a good call because when we looked at some of the other bulletins on the rival channels, guess what? They were leading on it too. Even if they weren't leading on it, it was up there in the top 3 stories. But I think that what was so upsetting was that this was a business story. Our team found it and news took it. So our bulletin was gutted. And I just thought, I can't do this. Because there are some big stories to tell in the business world, and they're not getting out there, or if they are being told, they're being told in 1 minute or 3 minute bursts, if you're lucky, or possibly 2 minutes, the in between. And I just thought, no, the shifts are drying up, but that's okay, because it means that I can focus on other things and I can work with people. I'm not going to be judgmental because I'm learning from them. And that's why I enjoy what I do, because I'm involved in telling their stories and I am learning. You are never too old to learn. And for me, it's a great privilege.
Yeah, that's fascinating. It's fascinating to hear the sort of inside view of what really goes on in a newsroom, because I do often get frustrated with the news and think, tell me more. Don't give me just the headlines. I want to go more in depth in some of the topics. And so I sort of shout at the newscasters.
Yeah.
But also the fact that you'd get bored. But it's interesting because you've got this structure to follow. I can see how you would. People think it's glamorous, right? People think it's fantastic to be a newscaster, to be a broadcaster. But actually, you are constrained. I hadn't considered that. That it's tough.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, news is a commodity. Okay, and when you go in and you have a program meeting, so you know what you're going to be talking about. I mean, some stories tell themselves. You know how they're going to follow up. And of course, that order can change because news is constant. You can suddenly get something which comes in and it completely throws a running order into chaos, and you have to run with that. But that's something which you're trained to do. You do that. You know what it is. But it's actually very exhausting. And the other thing, again, which people don't think about is that whenever you've got a major story that breaks a massive story, okay, you're sitting there in that studio and you're looking as calm as a cucumber, but what people don't see or hear is what's going on in the gallery. That gallery is the nerve center that drives the program. What you see on the screen, it comes out of that gallery. And you hear the shouting, the effing and the blinding if somebody doesn't do what they're told. And your instinct is just to say, will you shut up? But of course you can't, because the viewer will be thinking, well, who the hell are you talking to? What they don't realize is that you're responding to that noise in your earpiece. And again, that's part of the discipline, because you learn to separate yourself from that, to dip into the talk when it's happening. Or, you can be reading a cue interviewing somebody, and you may get your director or you may get the producer saying, end the interview now, we're going over to XYZ in 10 seconds. They're talking about whatever. It's just flashed up on Reuters. It's like, okay, fine. And you just got to quickly run with that. It's
Wow.
very, very frantic. It's really
Oh,
frantic.
I don't think I could do that. I don't think I could
Actually,
do
you
that.
could do that. You don't think you can do it, but you could do it. I mean, I never thought I could do it, but I don't think about it now because, you know, it's in the working DNA. Okay, it's how you're trained. You are trained to cope with every eventuality, you know. So you have to deal with it. If a plane falls from the sky somewhere and you've got VIPs on board, okay, you do get that adrenaline buzz. You run with it. You know, you can't stop. And it's the adrenaline buzz drives off. It tapers down when you finished your shift and you're handing over to somebody else. And then there's the exhaustion because it's like, my gosh, this has happened. I've done it. I've survived this. But it's very, very difficult because, you know, I've had one situation where I've had a breaking news story and it was very personal because one of the people who died in this event was connected to me personally. So I've been in that situation as well, and it's very, very strange when you go through that. So yeah,
I can imagine. I can imagine. So let's talk about what you're doing now. You have your own business now.
I do have my own business. Yes, it's called Magnus Communications Limited.
Tell us what you do in your business and how, you know, and how it came about.
I provide media services. So what I do is it's primarily working with conferences, which I really enjoy. And a client can actually set up a conference. They may say to me, look, we want you to facilitate this. Can you do it? Yes, I can do that. Let's talk about the structure. First of all, we need to know what sort of an event we're talking about. Are we talking about something which is going to be remote? Are we talking about something which is happening in a physical location? How many people are there going to be? What is the structure? In other words, how long is this going to be? Are we going to be talking for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours? So if it's going to be an all-day affair, how does the day break down? What do you want me to do? If people are going to be involved in a conversation which I'm chairing, who are the people that I'm talking to? You need to tell me about them. And this is where the fun starts. Because once you know who it is that is taking part in that discussion, then it becomes a jigsaw puzzle because you know what the theme is. So it's like, okay, so how does this person fit into that theme? How does that person fit into this theme? And that means you have to carry out your due diligence. You have to find out what it is that that person does. And it's like, well, okay, then. So now we've worked it out. So we can structure the conversation. We want XYZ to talk about this particular aspect, but then we know that the third person in this, they can pick up on this particular part of it and so on and so forth. And it builds. And it's really good when you have the time, you can talk to your client and the participants beforehand, because your job is to reassure them, because you want to bring out the best in them. And I think that when you have your pre-conference meetings, they get to talk to you remotely so they can see where you're coming from. You get to talk to them and you can run through the structure with them. And it's really interesting because you find that they say, oh yeah, that's really great. Oh, I can talk about that as well. So if you want to mention this bit, I'm more than happy to talk about it. And you know you've cracked it when they say, do you know what, we're probably all going to end up agreeing with each other. You might find it very boring, but it's never boring, because even though they say we will agree with each other, there will always be points where they don't agree. But it's an amicable discussion. We agree to disagree in a very polite, friendly way. And you know that you've cracked it when you engage the audience. It doesn't matter if they're a remote audience or if they're a physical audience, because there is that invitation for them to get involved. And when your screen is avalanched with questions, it's like, yes, we have got this just right. We have connected with this audience. And when those questions are still coming in, even when it's over, okay, you really know you've succeeded. So it's actually a very involved job, because to assume that you just sit there and parrot off questions, that's wrong. It's what goes on behind the scenes. You have to work with your client, okay, to make sure that you get it right. You owe it to them to do your work. okay, to really talk to people, to read up on the subject. It doesn't matter if you don't know anything about it. There is an implicit trust that you have an understanding of it, and you will try to increase that understanding. And that's what it's all about. It's what goes on behind the scenes, so that what you see front of house works, that you can connect, and it set your brain cells going. And that, to me, well, that's basically what I do, or one of the things which I do. It's the main thing that I do. But I also work with companies in terms of diversity. So, for example, there's one particular client that I have, and they have a purpose stroke value guide for themselves. It's their roadmap. And every so often they review that roadmap. And I have never been in a situation where a client has said to me, we're looking at our roadmap and we want you to be involved. So it's like, well, okay, then what is it you want me to do? Well, we have XYZ number of executives. Let's say we have 50 executives. So the person who spoke to me said, okay, I'm going to interview 25 of them. I want you to do the other 25. I want you to have an honest conversation with them, and I want you to make notes on that conversation and write up your notes and tell me what you think. It's like, well, okay, then fine. They were fascinating conversations, talking to people about what they felt about this roadmap, why they felt it was necessary to review that roadmap, where they felt the company was doing well in terms of attracting people from all walks of life, where they felt they could have done it better. And once we got all that information together, the company then took the remarks, etc. They structured this roadmap. They built the first draft, and they said, okay, then can you look at this roadmap and tell us what you think? Okay, here is the roadmap, and here are the key points that we're trying to address. Do we address those points on this roadmap? I looked through it. I wrote down my own interpretation and said, well, okay, then maybe you do it well here, but maybe you need to do X, Y, Z to really stress the point of whatever. And we went through 2, 3, 4 drafts, whatever it was. I can't remember the exact number, but it came together, and they were really, really pleased with that roadmap. Now, I am not arrogant enough to say that it was all down to me. It wasn't. I had a very tiny contribution, but I'm proud of that contribution. I am so, so proud of the little bit, the little role that I had to play in this, because it's a really good company. They are hot on attracting new people. They really like diversity, because their point is, look, we are a global company. We work in various communities. We impact on people's lives because of what it is that we do. And it's important that we bring in people regardless of their sexuality and their color, because we're part of their lives. We need to make them part of our lives, and they are the connector. They connect us to these communities, to these groups. We need to know what it is that people are thinking, why they think about us the way that they do. We can't do that if we stay within a bubble, okay, that we look in a particular area to recruit. They would also argue as well, and I entirely agree with them, that if you are diverse, if you look beyond those conventional streams, you are enriching the company, you are enriching it with people, you are enriching it with talent, you are enriching it with thought. And all of those factors combined will take you into the future, into the next level of where that future lies. And that extra input, all those ingredients can help you to enrich that roadmap, make it better, make it effective, make it purposeful. So yes, I mean, I really enjoyed that experience, because it brought incredible definition to what diversity actually means, what it is. It's not about being woke. It's about being reflective, understanding how the world works, and incorporating that into your business to make it really effective.
Fantastic. That's wonderful. Thank you so much for joining me. A fascinating story. Thank you for sharing. Thank you, everybody, for listening to The Speaker Show. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating on Apple Podcasts. You can keep up with future episodes on the Speakers Associates website, which is speakersassociates.com, or your favorite podcast app. And if you'd like to invite Juliette to come in and work with you on your conference, or to come to your company and help you, or to speak at your next event, please contact Speakers Associates in plenty of time so that you won't be disappointed. Bye-bye for now. I will see you next week.